Everyone could leave, but not Jimin. The heartbreaking reason behind Jungkook's fear is finally revealed in this emotional fictional story. The front door slammed so hard that the framed photographs on the hallway wall trembled. "Anyone can leave if they want," Jungkook said, his voice shaking. "But not you, Jimin. Never you." Room fell into a silence so heavy that even the rain tapping against the windows seemed afraid to continue. Nobody had ever heard him say something like that before. Not Namjoon. Not Jin, not Yoongi, not even Jimin himself. The confession burst out of him like something that had been trapped for years, hidden beneath smiles, jokes, late-night practices, and endless promises that everything was fine. Jimin stood near the entrance, still holding the small travel bag that suddenly felt much heavier than before. His eyes widened. Jungkook. But Jungkook refused to look at him. Instead, he stared at the floor. As though meeting Jimin's eyes would completely destroy whatever fragile control he still possessed. Outside, thunder rolled across the evening sky. The others exchanged uncertain glances. Nobody understood what had just happened. Because Jimin had only announced a short trip 3 days. That was all, 3 simple days. Yet Jungkook reacted as though the entire world was ending. And perhaps for him, it truly was. The strange thing about Jungkook was that he had always accepted goodbyes too easily. People left. Schedules changed, friends moved away, life continued. He never begged anyone to stay, never asked questions, never complained. Even when loneliness quietly settled inside him, he learned how to wear it like an invisible jacket, comfortable, familiar, permanent. The others admired that strength. But Jimin knew better. Strength and resignation often looked exactly the same. Years ago, before everything became bright stages and screaming crowds, Jungkook had developed a peculiar habit. He never unpacked his bags completely, even in places they stayed for months, even in rooms that belonged to him. A part of him always remained ready to leave, ready for change, ready for loss, as if permanence itself was something dangerous. Jimin noticed it first. One quiet evening while everyone else slept, he found Jungkook sitting by the window with his suitcase half open. "You know we're staying here for a long time, right?" Jimin asked softly. Jungkook smiled. "Maybe." "Maybe," he shrugged. "People leave eventually." Answer was simple, too simple. Jimin never forgot it. Over time, he learned countless little things about Jungkook that nobody else noticed. The way he kept old text messages from years ago. The way he hated unfinished conversations. The way he always waited until everyone else entered a room before stepping inside himself, as though he needed proof that nobody had disappeared while he wasn't looking. And perhaps the most heartbreaking habit of all, every single night without exception, Jungkook checked whether Jimin was still awake, sometimes through a text, sometimes by knocking softly on his door, sometimes by simply walking past and listening for movement, never explaining why, never asking for anything, just making sure. Jimin used to tease him about it. "Act like I'm going to vanish overnight." Jungkook always laughed, yet he never denied it. Nobody understood where that fear came from. Until one rainy autumn afternoon, the day everything changed. The members had gathered in the living room, sorting through old boxes filled with photographs and forgotten belongings. Memories spilled everywhere, childhood pictures, handwritten notes, broken accessories from performances long past. Laughter echoed through the house. Then Jimin discovered something unexpected, a faded notebook, small, worn out, carefully hidden beneath old clothes. Jungkook froze the moment he saw it. "Touch that." His voice carried a sharpness that startled everyone. The room became still. Jimin looked at him. For the first time in years, genuine fear flickered across Jungkook's expression. Not anger, fear, pure and vulnerable. Jimin placed the notebook down gently. "I'm sorry." Jungkook was already walking toward him, slowly, as though approaching something dangerous. His hands trembled. "I thought I lost that." Nobody spoke. Something inside that notebook mattered. Something important enough to make the strongest person in the room look completely broken. Jimin hesitated, then quietly asked, "What's inside?" Jungkook remained silent for a very long time. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The world outside blurred into gray. Finally, he sat down, and for the first time he began telling a story he had never shared. "When I was younger," his voice came out barely above a whisper. "Someone promised they would never leave." Others listened carefully. "She was my grandmother." Confession settled like falling snow. Jungkook rarely talked about family memories, especially painful ones. Every afternoon after school, she'd wait for me with food. We'd talk for hours. She always told me that no matter how big the world became, there would always be one person who stayed. His fingers tightened around the old notebook. I believed her. A sad smile appeared. The last time I saw her, she told me she'd see me again soon. Silence. No one interrupted. She never came back. Rain grew louder. Jungkook looked down. I kept waiting. Words shattered something invisible inside the room because everyone understood the waiting had never truly ended. Children who lose someone unexpectedly often continue searching for them long after everyone else has moved on. Jungkook carried that child within him, still waiting, still hopping, still terrified. And then, he continued quietly, I met all of you. His eyes finally lifted, stopping at Jimin. You were different. Jimin's breath caught. Jungkook laughed softly, a broken sound. You annoyed me. Others chuckled through the heavy atmosphere. You followed me everywhere. You talked endlessly. You worried about things nobody else noticed. Jimin smiled despite the tears gathering in his eyes. But every single time I thought someone might leave me behind. Jungkook swallowed. You stayed. Truth emerged slowly, painfully, like sunlight after endless storms. Jimin wasn't merely important. He represented something Jungkook had lost years ago, certainty, safety. The impossible belief that somebody could remain not forever, but long enough to heal the parts that had stopped trusting permanence. The notebook contained old letters, messages Jungkook wrote to people he missed, people he couldn't say goodbye to properly. And among those pages, hundreds of entries mentioned one name, Jimin, not romantic confession, not dramatic declarations, simple moments. Jimin waiting after practice. Jimin bringing food. Jimin noticing when Jungkook wasn't smiling. Jimin staying, always staying. Tears rolled down Jimin's cheeks. He finally understood. The reason Jungkook panicked whenever separation was mentioned. The reason late-night messages arrived without explanation. The reason goodbyes felt catastrophic. It wasn't about 3 days. It was never about 3 days. It was about an old promise broken by time. A child who learned that love could disappear without warning. And a man who found one person capable of teaching him that some people choose to remain. Jimin walked across the room, slowly, carefully. He sat beside Jungkook. Neither spoke. Words felt unnecessary. The rain outside softened. Thunder faded into the distance. Then Jimin placed his hand over Jungkook's warm. Steady, not going anywhere. Simple sentence. Yet Jungkook closed his eyes as though hearing the most beautiful thing in the world. The others looked away, giving them privacy, giving years of unspoken fear the dignity they deserved. Jungkook finally laughed. A real laugh, small, fragile, but genuine. Everyone else can leave if life takes them somewhere else, he admitted softly. But not you, Jimin squeezed his hand. And why not me? Jungkook looked at him, the storm inside his heart quieter than before. Because somewhere along the way, his voice trembled. You became the place I come back to. And for the first time in years, Jungkook understood something his younger self never could. People do leave, life changes, nothing remains exactly the same. Yet love isn't measured by permanence. It is measured by the moment someone chooses to stay when leaving would have been easier. And Jimin, through every fear, every silence, every hidden wound, had always chosen to stay. Morning arrived quietly. The rain from the previous night had disappeared, leaving behind a silver glow across the city skyline. Sunlight filtered through the large windows, painting soft patterns on the wooden floor. For everyone else, it was simply another day. For Jungkook, something had changed. He woke up earlier than usual. The strange heaviness that had followed him for years still existed, but now it had a name. And somehow, numbing pain made it less terrifying. The house remained silent. He walked into the kitchen and found Jimin already there, standing near the coffee machine, still here. The thought appeared automatically, still here. Jimin looked over his shoulder and smiled. Good morning. Jungkook nodded, morning. Neither mentioned what happened last night. Some truths, once spoken aloud, needed time to settle. The scent of coffee filled the air. Outside, birds gathered along the balcony railing, their songs replacing the storm that had dominated the evening before. Jimin prepared 2 cups, one for himself. One for Jungkook, exactly the way he liked it, no questions asked, no explanations needed. The familiarity made Jungkook's chest tight. For years, he had believed attachment was dangerous. The more someone mattered, the more devastating their absence would become. It was safer to expect departure, safer to prepare for loneliness before loneliness arrived. Yet Jimin had spent years quietly dismantling that belief, not through grand gestures, not through promises, but through consistency. Through ordinary moments repeated thousands of times, the same knock on his door after difficult schedules, the same questions about whether he had eaten, the same laughter during sleepless nights, the same unwavering presence. People often talked about dramatic acts of love. Nobody talked enough about constancy, about choosing someone every single day. Jungkook accepted the cup. Thanks. Jimin sat across from him. You slept. A little. Better than yesterday, Jungkook thought carefully. Different. Jimin smiled. Take different. Silence settled between them, comfortable silence. The kind that existed only between people who understood each other's unspoken language. A few hours later, the others woke up. The atmosphere felt lighter. Namjoon played music in the living room. Jin complained dramatically about breakfast portions. Yoongi pretended not to care about anything while secretly making extra food for everyone. Life continued, normal, beautifully ordinary. Yet Jimin noticed small changes in Jungkook. For the first time in years, his bedroom door remained open. His suitcase, usually resting near the closet, had finally disappeared, its contents unpacked completely. The sight stopped Jimin in his tracks, a simple action but one carrying the weight of years. Jungkook caught him staring. What? Jimin pointed toward the room. Suitcase. Oh, a brief pause. I put it away. Why? Jungkook looked embarrassed. I guess. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't need to be ready to run all the time. Answer nearly broke Jimin's heart, because nobody should have spent so many years believing that staying somewhere was temporary. That happiness required an emergency exit. The afternoon passed peacefully. Later, Jimin prepared for his short trip. Only 3 days, nothing extraordinary. The schedule couldn't be changed. Life, after all, continued moving. But this time felt different. Jungkook watched quietly from the doorway. No panic. No trembling hands. No desperate attempts to hide fear behind jokes. Instead, something calmer existed, something built on trust rather than certainty. Jimin zipped his travel bag. You okay? Jungkook nodded. Yeah, sure. A small smile appeared. No, Jimin laughed. At least you're honest. Honesty surprised even Jungkook himself. For years, vulnerability felt like weakness. Admitting fear meant giving it power. Yet perhaps the opposite was true. Perhaps acknowledging pain prevented it from controlling everything. I'm still scared, Jungkook admitted. Jimin listened. Part of me probably always will be. Room remained quiet, but he looked toward the window where sunlight illuminated the city below. I think I'm learning that being afraid doesn't mean people will leave. Jimin's expression softened. And if they do, Jungkook thought about that, really thought about it. The answer came slowly. Then I'll survive. A profound silence followed, not because the statement sounded dramatic, but because it represented growth. The child who once waited endlessly for someone to return had become someone capable of carrying love without being destroyed by absence. Jimin walked closer. You know something? What? I never stayed because I had to. Jungkook blinked. I stayed because I wanted to. The words settled deep inside him. Choice. Perhaps that mattered more than promises. People couldn't guarantee forever, but they could choose today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. Thousands of small decisions creating something stronger than grand declarations. Evening arrived. The car waited outside. The trip would begin soon. The others gathered near the entrance. Goodbyes filled the air, lighthearted, warm, normal. Jimin adjusted his jacket. Be back before you know it. Jungkook smiled. I know. Confidence in his voice surprised everyone. Jimin tilted his head. No dramatic speech. No emotional breakdown. Jungkook laughed. Today, front door opened. Cool evening air entered the house. Jimin picked up his bag. Before leaving, he turned around. What if I take longer than 3 days? Jungkook considered the question. Then his answer came with a peace he had never known before. Miss you? A pause. But I'll wait without being afraid. Jimin's eyes softened. The world outside remained vast and uncertain. People would come and go. Life would continue changing. Nothing could stop that. Yet some connections learned how to survive distance, how to breathe through silence, how to trust in return rather than fear abandonment. Jimin stepped outside. The car engine started. Jungkook stood at the doorway watching him leave. Not with panic, not with desperation, but with quiet faith. because love was no longer a prison built from fear. It had finally become a home built from choice. And for the first time in his life, Jungkook understood that letting someone leave for a while did not mean losing them forever. Sometimes, the strongest form of love was believing that the people who mattered most would always find their way back. And deep inside his heart, he knew Jimin would.
The house felt different after Jimin left. Not empty, just quieter. The kind of quiet that made ordinary sounds seem louder than usual. The ticking clock in the kitchen, the wind brushing against the balcony doors, the distant laughter of people walking somewhere far below. Jungkook stood near the window long after the car disappeared from sight. Years ago, he would have counted the hours immediately. He would have checked his phone every few minutes. He would have convinced himself that silence meant disaster. Now he simply took a deep breath and let the moment pass. Namjoon noticed it first. Later that evening, he found Jungkook sitting in the living room, reading an old book he had abandoned months earlier. No restless packing, no anxious glances toward the entrance, just calm. It was unfamiliar, beautiful, but unfamiliar. Namjoon sat beside him. Doing okay? It wasn't a question. Jungkook looked up. Think so. A small smile appeared on Namjoon's face. Last year, you would have called him 6 times by now. Jungkook laughed. Only 6. Fine, 12. Laughter that followed felt genuine, not forced, not protective, simply real. For a while they sat together without speaking. The evening sunlight slowly faded into shades of gold and blue. Then Namjoon asked something unexpected. Do you remember the first day you met Jimin? Jungkook closed the book. The memory arrived instantly, clear, untouched by time. He wouldn't stop talking. Namjoon laughed. That's still true. Kept asking questions. True. Jungkook smiled at the memory. He looked completely confident. But later, I realized he was just as scared as everyone else. Realization had changed everything. Jimin wasn't fearless. He simply refused to let fear stop him from reaching out to others. Perhaps that was why people naturally gravitated toward him. He understood loneliness. And because he understood it, he noticed it in others, even when they tried desperately to hide it. That night, Jungkook received a message. It was simple. Just a photo. Jimin standing near a river illuminated by city lights. The caption contained only 4 words, still here. Eat your dinner. Jungkook stared at the screen, then he laughed. Some things never changed, he typed back. Already did. Don't forget yours. 3 dots appeared immediately. Good. Proud of you. The warmth spreading through Jungkook's chest surprised him. Distance no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like trust. The next morning brought unexpected rain, soft at first, then heavier. The sound against the windows awakened old memories, memories of waiting, of uncertainty. For a brief moment, anxiety returned, quiet, familiar, dangerously comfortable. Jungkook sat alone in his room, listening to the storm. The old thoughts began whispering. What if something happens? What if plans change? What if people eventually grow tired and leave? The questions had lived inside him for years. They knew every weakness, every fear, every hidden wound. His fingers instinctively reached for his phone. Ready to seek reassurance, ready to silence the loneliness before it could grow. Then he stopped. The room remained still. Outside, thunder echoed softly. He remembered something Jimin once said. You don't have to defeat fear in one day. You only have to refuse letting it make your choices. The memory settled his breathing slowly, carefully. Jungkook placed the phone back down. He walked toward the balcony instead. The rain smelled fresh, clean. The city below continued moving despite the weather. People carrying umbrellas. Children running through puddles. Life unfolding without permission or certainty. And somehow that felt comforting. Not everything needed control. Not everything required guarantees. Sometimes, trust meant accepting that the world remained unpredictable while choosing love anyway. Later that afternoon, Jin invited everyone to cook together. A terrible idea. At least according to Yoongi. The kitchen transformed into absolute chaos within minutes. Arguments about recipes. Accusations of stolen ingredients. Laughter so loud it overwhelmed the storm outside. Jungkook found himself smiling more than usual. Living more than usual. It dawned on him that he had spent years preparing for loss instead of fully experiencing what he already possessed. Always bracing. Always anticipating endings. Meanwhile, countless beautiful moments passed by unnoticed. Perhaps healing wasn't about becoming fearless. Perhaps it meant allowing happiness to exist despite fear. That evening, another message arrived from Jimin. This time, it wasn't a photograph. It was a voice recording. Jungkook pressed play. The familiar voice filled the room. Today was exhausting. The weather here is terrible. I almost slipped 3 times, which honestly would have been embarrassing. Anyway, a brief pause, soft laughter. I was thinking about something. Sound of distant traffic echoed behind him. People always talk about staying together forever, but I think forever is too big for humans. Jungkook listened carefully. Maybe what matters is choosing someone over and over again, even after arguments, even after distance, even after difficult days. Another pause, gentler this time. And if I'm being honest, the voice lowered. Never regretted choosing you as family. Silence, just a few seconds, yet those words carried unimaginable weight. See you soon, okay? The recording ended. Jungkook remained motionless, his eyes burned not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that love often revealed itself in ordinary sentences spoken without dramatic intention. Choosing someone, again and again, that was enough. For the first time, he opened the old notebook once more, the same notebook that contained years of unfinished goodbyes, the same pages filled with longing and fear. He turned to an empty page, the pen rested in his hand. Then he began writing, not to people who disappeared, not to ghosts from the past, but to the present. Today, Jimin left for 3 days, and for the first time I wasn't destroyed by it. I still missed him. I still worried. But I also laughed with everyone. I ate dinner. I watched the rain. I lived. Maybe healing doesn't mean forgetting old pain. Maybe it means understanding that the people who love you are not responsible for the ones who hurt you. He stopped writing, reading the words carefully. A strange peace settled inside him. The notebook no longer felt like a monument to abandonment. It had become proof of growth. Proof that broken things could learn new meanings. Night eventually covered the city. The storm finally disappeared. Stars emerged one by one above the skyline. And somewhere hundreds of kilometers away, Jimin looked at the exact same sky. The distance between them existed, yet it no longer frightened Jungkook, because he had finally learned the difference between absence and loss. One was temporary, the other permanent. And Jimin had never truly been lost. He had simply gone somewhere for a little while, with every intention of coming home. The third morning arrived with sunlight so bright that it spilled across Jungkook's room like liquid gold. The weather had changed. The stormy skis of previous days had disappeared completely. Everything looked clearer. Even the air felt different. Jungkook opened his eyes and realized something unusual. He had slept through the entire night, no waking up at 3 in the morning, no checking his phone, no silent fears crawling into his thoughts, just sleep, peaceful, complete. For years, he had forgotten what that felt like. Downstairs, the others were already awake. Jin was singing terribly while preparing breakfast. Yoongi complained about the noise despite secretly smiling. Namjoon sat near the window with a book in his hands. The ordinary chaos of home continued exactly as it always had. And suddenly, Jungkook understood something. Home was never a place. It was people. People who remained. People who accepted the parts of you that even you struggled to understand. People who knew your fears without using them against you. The realization stayed with him throughout the morning. Later, while helping Namjoon organize old shelves in the living room, they discovered a forgotten box hidden behind several books. Dust covered the surface. Years of memories slept inside. Namjoon lifted an eyebrow. I don't remember this. Jungkook knelt beside him. The lid creaked open, photographs, letters, old practice schedules, tiny pieces of their shared history. They laughed at embarrassing hairstyles, remembered ridiculous arguments, talked about dreams they once considered impossible. Then Jungkook found something unexpected. A small recording device, ancient, almost broken. A label was attached. Winter practice room. Curiosity immediately filled the air. Namjoon pressed the button. Static emerged, then voices, younger voices, their own. Laughter echoed through the speaker. The sound transported them years into the past, a time when uncertainty defined everything, when success remained a distant possibility, when all they truly possessed was one another. And another voice appeared, Jimin, bright, warm, overflowing with energy. If one of us gets scared, he said through the recording, the others have to stay beside him, that's the rule. Silence followed, then young Jungkook's voice. What if everyone leaves someday? The question struck him like lightning. He had completely forgotten asking that. The room became still, static crackled softly, and then came Jimin's answer, simple, uncomplicated. Then I'll stay until you're not afraid anymore. Recording ended. Nobody spoke. Years had passed since that moment, yet Jimin had done exactly what he promised. Not because he owed anyone anything, not because he was forced, but because kindness had always been woven into who he was. Jungkook stared at the old device. A forgotten memory had suddenly explained everything. The foundation of trust had been built much earlier than he realized. The The child inside him had heard those words and protected them, carried them through loneliness, held onto them during moments when the world felt uncertain. And now, years later, he understood their true meaning. Jimin never promised forever, he promised presence, until fear no longer controlled him. The difference mattered. That afternoon, another message arrived. This time, it contained a short video. Jimin stood in front of a beautiful river as evening approached. The wind played with his hair. The sunset painted everything in orange and gold. "Guess what?" Jimin said. "I'll be home tomorrow." His smile remained unchanged, familiar, comforting. "And before you ask, yes, I bought food for everyone." A dramatic sigh followed. "Which means I once again proved that I'm the most thoughtful person in this family." Video ended with laughter. Jungkook found himself laughing too. The sound surprised him. It came naturally, without resistance, without hidden sadness beneath it. Night arrived quietly. The stars looked brighter than usual. Jungkook walked onto the balcony alone. The city lights stretched endlessly into the distance. Somewhere beyond those lights, millions of people experienced their own joys and losses, their own reunions, their own fears. Life moved continuously. Nobody remained unchanged. Yet human hearts continued choosing connection despite knowing its risks. Perhaps that was courage, not the absence of fear. But loving anyway. The old notebook rested in his hands. He opened it once more. Another blank page waited. This time, the words arrived effortlessly. "I used to believe that if someone became important enough, losing them would destroy me, so I prepared for goodbyes before they happened. I kept part of myself ready to leave first, ready to survive. But surviving isn't the same as living." He paused. The night breeze carried the scent of flowers from nearby gardens, soft, gentle. "I think I understand now. People aren't meant to heal old wounds by promising eternity. They heal them by showing up today and tomorrow, and the next day." One ordinary moment at a time. A smile appeared. The pen continued moving. "Jimin didn't save me from fear. He simply stayed beside me long enough for me to realize that fear doesn't deserve to make my decisions." The words felt true, more true than anything he had written before. He closed the notebook. For the first time in years, it no longer represented grief. It represented growth. Morning eventually came. The final day. The day Jimin would return. Yet something inside Jungkook remained surprisingly calm. Excited, happy, but calm. Because the return itself was no longer proof that everything would be okay. Everything had already been okay. The waiting had taught him that. The distance had taught him that. And perhaps Jimin had known all along that this short separation would become an important step, not away from one another, but toward a healthier understanding of love. By noon, everyone prepared for Jimin's arrival. The house filled with energy. Jin organized food. Namjoon cleaned unnecessarily. Yoongi pretended none of this interested him. Hours passed. The sun slowly descended. Then, the familiar sound of a car stopping outside. Laughter erupted immediately. Footsteps, voices, the front door opened. And there he was, Jimin, exactly as promised, smiling, carrying too many bags, complaining dramatically about the trip. The room exploded with happiness, warm embraces, questions, stories, life returning to its usual rhythm. Jungkook stood quietly for a moment, watching. Not because he feared this happiness would disappear, but because he wanted to fully experience it, to remain present, to remember. Jimin eventually noticed him. Their eyes met. No grand speeches followed, no emotional declarations, just understanding. Jimin walked over. A small grin appeared. "Told you I'd come back." Jungkook smiled, a peaceful smile untouched by anxiety. "I know." Perhaps those two words carried more meaning than any promise ever could. Because trust, once rebuilt, transforms simple moments into extraordinary ones. And for the first time since childhood, Jungkook truly believed that some people leave for a while, only because they fully intend to return home.